Washington district.
Well, no, we haven't started.
Sorry.
Now we can start.
Okay.
Now it's, you want to go this way around the table this way?
Either way.
We're breaking the tradition.
I'll stop.
We always start with Senator Brent, unless Bill is here. But so now that he took a bite of the cookie, maybe we should start.
Okay.
We'll start with you.
Sure. Senator Watson, from Washington district.
Hi, Bob Norris, Franklin County and the town of Elburg and Grand Isle.
And then Richie will be here. And then I'm Andrew Perkslick, Washington district.
Jenny Lyons, Chittenden Southeast.
Pat Brennan, Grand Isle District.
Thank you all. Hi, Terry Corson, State Court Administrator, and I'm here primarily to introduce Greg Mosley, who's our Chief of Finance and Administration, and Marcia Shells, who's our Chief Technology Innovation Officer with our Technology Services Center. We very much appreciate the opportunity to present our requests for the Budget Adjustment Act for this year. Greg will address the two primary components of the request, which include monies for our technology needs, which in the past had been financed by the tech fund. And Greg will explain and has information and materials that were provided to you in front of you in the form of a memo and then PowerPoint slides showing how the funds have just decreased. And I believe we were actually here last year kind of forecasting this. And then also to address a discrepancy in last year's budget regarding a cost of living increase for the sheriffs. And those are the two components that Greg will review. And then Marcia, in her role, will also address in more detail kind of the technology needs and the funding challenges there. So I'm here to introduce them and to thank you for this opportunity. And with that, Greg and Marcia, I think we'll probably sit here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that come up, but they have kind of the fine details, so that'll be probably more productive for them to present the information, if that's okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Do you have copies of the PowerPoint?
They do.
I think we just have the copies of the ups and downs, and we have it on our website. That's how I look at it.
Oh, okay, I have the PowerPoint here.
Oh,
if you want
wonderful.
it. Yeah, it's just attached to the memo.
Oh, wonderful.
We got
Thank
some
you,
yesterday,
Here's a copy. Do you want a copy? Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, the slide here.
Oh, I'll use it this.
Thank you.
You introduce yourself for the record, even though you were already introduced by Terry. But...
Hi, my name is Greg Mosley. I'm the Chief of Finance and Administration for the Judiciary.
And I'm Marcia Shells. I'm the Chief Technology Innovation Officer for the Judiciary.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our budget adjustment request for FY25. So on either the second slide or the bottom of page 1 of the memo is a summary of 4 different pieces of changes that we are requesting. I'm going to start actually at the bottom with a smaller dollar amount, work our way up, because I think probably the conversation will hang mostly about IT and what's happening with that and the tech. But I wanted to explain 2 of the what I call reversions. So down at the bottom of the summary, you'll see that we're trying to shift $50,000 out of the Essex Connector project. That was something that was funded last year, $300,000 to do design and planning for the Essex Courthouse and Guildhall, to connect that to a meeting house that's right next door to the courthouse, and then use the 2 buildings interchangeably for the courthouse. That project, that work has mostly been done, and that project will be submitted or was submitted to the governor's office for the capital budget. We'll find out next week where that stands. But what we learned in the process was that if we could install an ADA accessible bathroom in this meeting house, which is right next door to the courthouse, we can begin using that building for the courthouse. So we have jury draws where we bring in about 60, 70 people, potential jurors, and we don't have a space in the courthouse large enough outside of the courtroom to do that. So we've been using the Guildhall, which is about 100 yards down the road. It's a town office building, and having the jurors meet there. And then we do something that I don't think happens anywhere else in the United States. We parade the jurors down County Common to the courthouse. It's inconvenient for the jurors. It really questions security and confidentiality. It's not something we want to be doing. We can put in a bathroom in this meeting house. We can use the building that's right next door. We still would have to bring people outside about 30 feet rather than 100 yards. If the connector project goes forward, we would then connect the buildings and solve the problem completely. So we were asking for, to use that money that was dedicated to Essex County Courthouse, but it was for design and planning only. Once you start building a bathroom, it's construction. We felt really what we're asking for here is legislative intent, just to make sure that we're operating within the appropriation.
So do you own the building? Who owns the building?
The county owns both those buildings. We don't, the judiciary doesn't own any buildings. But we do operate the only courthouse in that county, county building. So we're planning to use money. This is essentially a zero-sum request. We have the money, we just want to make sure we have the legislative intent. The reversion is in the governor's budget recommendation, but the appropriation is not. And with the other one, the $800,000 county HVAC reversion, similar process. We have a project already underway. It's been 2 or 3 years now. During COVID, we were granted $5.7 million in appropriation to invest in county courthouses and put in HVAC. During the COVID years, that was essential. Still is essential, and people kind of forget about it now already. That project is almost winding down. We put in or upgraded HVAC in 12 county courthouses. We will have some money left over once that work is completely done. We're waiting for some roofing to be finished down in, I think, Rutland or Wyndham, I forget. But we would like to shift $800,000 from the HVAC project and still invest it in the county courthouses, but do some security upgrades, which is essentially the badge swipes that we have all through the state. We've been trying to put those into the county buildings as well, where the counties are agreeable to it. And we want to do some rewiring so that we can upgrade the network wiring, but it's not HVAC. So again, we're looking for money that we're already dedicated to investing in county courthouses, but for a slightly different purpose in that courthouse. We're seeing this as a zero-sum request, but clarifying legislative intent. And again, the $800,000 reversion is in the governor's recommended budget adjustment, but the appropriation is not. The next item is the security services COLA, cost of living adjustment. Last year, we made a request for a number of security upgrades, what we call the S17 report, and that asks us to do an overhaul of what would the court security system look like. We had some positions and state positions in there, and we had some increased deputies in there, and we also had a cost of living adjustment for the sheriffs in there. Some positions got funded, but nothing for the sheriff's deputies. So we have no new sheriff positions. We also didn't get a COLA increase. I went to the sheriffs to ask for a new contract, and they balked at that. And we agreed on what essentially is the same increase that state employees received, which is about 3.7%. And it cost us $388,000. So we're hoping to get that funded into our base.
Was that in the governor's meeting?
Yes. And that brings us to information technology, unless there's questions on those smaller items.
Well, I'm just wondering, okay, so on the transfer of the reversion of the 800,000, but then you said the governor didn't put it in for the rewiring and security enhancement.
Correct.
Was there a reason for that, or?
I was not given a reason.
Okay.
It's just baked into the overall, I think it was $110 million budget adjustment bill. It's just baked into that.
Okay. Do you know where, we don't know where the money went. Where did the 100,000 go?
It's just, like I said, it's kind of baked into the bottom line. I think,
in there, okay.
I think they had about 85 million in expenditures and the rest to reserves. Somewhere in that 85 million is the 850,000 that came from these projects.
Okay.
I don't think we can identify particular.
But the bathrooms were included in the governor's proposal or not?
No,
Okay, so those two, yeah.
So the reversions would be in that, they're not in this spreadsheet that I showed.
In the bottom,
I didn't see them there.
there's a total,
Which is part of the,
total.
it's just part of that total reversions that's, in accordance with that statutory. You'd have to look at that to actually see that.
Yeah.
So that's why we wouldn't have Hardy in to talk about all the reversions.
That's right.
Okay. But yeah, the increase in security is in here. The 388 is in the.
and most of that's for sheriffs. We do have one contract with a private security firm, and it's a COLA for all of our security, contracted security.
Okay. Any questions, Norris?
Yeah, a quick question on, under S-17, did you fill those 11 state positions presently, or?
Presently, of the 11, 5 have been filled, 2 are in recruitment for Franklin and Chittenden County. And 1 actually is filled, the person's deployed, so that's kind of open. The remaining 3, actually, we have not filled pending approval of the 388,000, because we do have to pay that. That was built into the sheriff's contracts. But if it is approved in the Budget Adjustment Act, then we could then open and recruit for those 3 positions.
Thank you. So is it going to be recommend that these positions get switched to state positions or still contracted through the sheriff's office?
Well, those aren't actually positions, that's to cover cost of living. The 3 positions that we were approved for are state positions.
They are state positions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We just have to somehow account for the money to pay the cost of living if we don't receive it through the legislature, because we did contract with the sheriffs for this year to pay the cost of living. They weren't willing to enter into the contract without some cost of living.
It can be confusing because we do use a multifaceted approach to provide security. The backbone of it is county sheriffs. We have about 40 FTEs of deputies that are in courthouses. We also have about, now it's about 25 state positions, security officers. And that's these 11 positions that we're filling. And we also have a private security firm, which is used to fill in where we can't find or have employees to do work. So it's a patchwork with using all 3 different types of security.
Senator Watson?
I do have a question. Can you tell me about you're thinking around, well, because actually, let me back up. You have asked for this to be in the base budget as well?
The 388,000? Yes.
Okay. So we'll find out shortly if it's.
Are you talking about FY26?
I am, yeah. Well, I guess I'm wondering, like, the thinking that I've got right now is, this is going to be an ongoing cost theoretically. So I just want to make sure that we're funding ongoing costs in the base budget rather than the BAA. But this is just to backfill for this.
So last year, when we presented our FY25 budget, we had baked this cost into the S17 larger recommendations. It was about a $2 million cost for everything. And 388,000 was for cost of living for contracted sheriffs. In that debate, the state positions were funded, but nothing for the sheriffs. And so they didn't get a COLA increase last year. That's what this represents. We submitted our FY26 budget. It will, again, have a COLA in there for sheriffs, and that'll be an annual thing.
Right.
They do not get funded through the payout. They're not state employees.
But it wouldn't cover I remember this was for the deputy sheriffs? Or
Yes.
no? So does the potential ongoing request include this COLA for the deputy sheriffs?
Yes.
It does, okay.
It will.
Okay.
Yes. Every year, and they seem to be interested in trying to stay equivalent to what state employees
Yeah,
are getting.
yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
And the sheriff deputies that we use are under contract. They're separate from transport deputies, which are actually state employees who work for the county and funded through the state's attorneys and deputies and sheriff's department.
Okay, thank you.
So it's very multifaceted. That brings us to IT.
Sure.
There's a lot going on with IT. That's why Marcia has joined me to help explain the IT side. Let me just quickly introduce the funding side, because For some who've been on this committee, you may have heard me in the past years talk about the funding problem with judiciary's IT. We used to be funded completely, our IT was funded completely by this special fund, the Court Technology Fund. And that gets revenue from civil violations, not all civil violations, but a piece of it. Essentially, there's fees on top of speeding tickets that go to this fund. For many years, we were getting between 1.6 and 1.9 million dollars into the fund, and our IT budget was about $1 million. It worked out great, but that was 7, 8 years ago. And there have been a number of changes, including COVID, but also some policy changes that made the collectability of civil violations more difficult. And so the revenue has gone down steadily over the last 7 or 8 years. This is not something that's unknown to JFO. They did an issue brief, it's about 2 years ago now, that explained what was happening with civil violation revenue. It's not just the judiciary, there's a dozen different agencies or special funds that get some slice of revenue, and the revenue is all going down because you can now, if you lose your license for having too many traffic tickets, you can now go to the DMV and get your license back without having to pay the underlying fees that cause it to get suspended. And so it's very hard to collect that now. And so the revenue that was at 1.9 million is now about 750,000 a year. It's been a little flat now for a couple of years, so that might be a new normal for us. And our IT budget has gone up because IT has gone up, and because of COVID, we now have different technology in the courthouse. And Marcia can go through more of the details of the expense side of things.
Thank you, Greg. So I just want to say a few words about this tech fund, because I had looked up the legislature to see what their reading was, and this was established in 2007, so it's been a while, and it was to cover software and hardware needed for case management, electronic filing, electronic document management, implementation, including training, electronic audio and video, court recordings and conferencing equipment, and support of the judiciary's information technology network. So basically, it was to cover everything except staff salaries and benefits, for everything to do with the judiciary's IT. And if you look at I realize it's in black and white, but I would like to go over a couple of these graphs that were in the PowerPoint that we distributed, because I believe this picture really tells the story.
Slide number 4.
The first one, it says tech fund revenue changes, the first one. Okay, so this is what Greg was describing. I'll just start with, put on my glasses for this, FY14. So this doesn't show obviously going back to 2007, but it shows enough to show how there was this bump up, and then it has steadily gone down. And the specific sources of revenue are these administrative surcharge for civil violations, a failure to answer fee, and a failure to pay fee. So it's not even like the fine itself, it's these extra fees on top of it.
That's what's in these numbers, just those 3 extra things?
Correct. So if you go to the next graph, you'll see the line that's at the one that ends up at the bottom is, and it's blue if you look at it online, that is that tech fund revenue. And then the other line that is increasing and is ending up somewhere there between 3 and 3.5 million is the expenses. So you may be wondering, how did we do that? How did we spend that money if the money wasn't coming in? Now, I will say for some time, as you could see early on, we were building up funds in that tech fund. So we were spending less than was coming in, but that is certainly not the case now. But the next slide rather, shows how we took advantage of one-time funding to really modernize the IT for the judiciary. And it was done in a variety of ways. And I know it's just shades of gray here. But I can describe it, starting back in FY18, there was the project to replace the homegrown case management system, which had lasted almost 30 years for the judiciary, but certainly was not technology that could be sustainable over time and, didn't have cybersecurity protections, and it was hard to find staff to maintain it, et cetera. The judiciary had to modernize with an off-the-shelf product. And that was Tyler Technologies Odyssey, which is now called Enterprise Justice. So that was funded by capital funds, thank you. It was called the Next Generation Case Management System Project. So that was orange. If you're seeing it, it's in color. And that was the FY 18, 19, 20, and 20, a little bit of 21, 22, 23 when it was finally implemented. Then when the pandemic happened in FY 21, pandemic funds were used then to put in all the remote hearing technology, as well as some mobile technology for staff, as well as cybersecurity, and was fantastic because it brought us, into new technology, but that's not funds that, are ongoing. Then, in FY 23, we got an appropriation from the Budget Adjustment Act we discovered, as we were talking about some of the other funds we're asking for, the network cabling in all of the courthouses was very old. So as fast as the network the internet could be going to those buildings, it was slow. It was like 1990s technology. I should know the numbers. It's Cat
6 is
the new. I think it was 3 in some of these buildings. So we've been going around. We've been actually hogging all of the contractors that we can get in the state of Vermont to do this wiring. So we're still working at it. But we got some appropriation in that BAA to do some of that network cabling upgrades, as well as replace all the sound systems, which were ancient in all the courthouses, which we are currently finalizing in the next month or two, and some money to put better remote technology in the correctional facilities. So that took place in the FY 23 bar. Then last year was huge when we implemented our own IT network and separated from support from the executive branch Agency of Digital Services. And I want to make the point that that was a huge expenditure, and you may think, well, is part of what this budget gap coming up is about, is it that network? I can tell you, if we had not implemented our own network, our budget gap would be larger. We're saving money from implementing our own network. So this would be a bigger problem if we hadn't done that. And so looking forward here to FY 25 and on, the part of the bar that's above the line is the budget gap between what it will take for steady state maintenance and operations and support and cybersecurity protections for our existing systems on top of that revenue that's coming in.
The line is the revenue that's projected from the tech fund.
Okay, makes sense.
That line has a little bit of a bump in FY 25, you see. Our request last year included what we needed for all of IT. It was not funded as requested. What was funded was $750,000 in contingent year-end surplus. So that's why there's a little bit of a bump there. But next year we're expecting it to go back to just the tech fund, which we're expecting to be about $750,000.
But here we're talking about FY 25, and we still need that difference, which is in our ask for the BAA, to be able to cover our IT costs on top of that additional $750,000 we received.
And is your IT cost projection increase from 25 on and just an inflation?
Inflation, correct.
Okay. I remember talking about that last year. Senator Watson?
Yeah, so the nature of the IT work that needs to be done, is this more capital, replacement of wires, or is this software, or?
So all of the project work has been funded.
Mm-hmm.
So we are looking just for maintaining and keeping secure what we have.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking for extra project funding.
So what's the line items in our budget, which aren't provided here, but we can certainly provide that. It's 50 lines. It's mostly software cost, licensing, and there's some services in there, contracted services, but there are no projects.
No, like it would be normal hardware replacements, and ongoing software subscription costs. That's what mostly it is these days, instead of the old method of asking for maintenance fees.
Is it the reason that you're in the BAs, you had asked for it?
Yes.
25, and then we've given you that
Just a
money
step.
of the surplus, the contingency fund that you got, but you're saying like, we were serious when we asked for it last year, no, we need it for this year.
Yes, I think we were told, you don't get it, come back and ask for it in the BAA.
So the funny part about that is the revenue from the tech fund, you can see, started to go down in like 2017, 18, 19. And I have presentations from 2018 where I came to the legislature, I think it was the House Appropriations Committee, and I said, this is going to be a problem. Because IT costs are only going to go up, and it looks like revenue is only going to go down. And at some point in the near future, we're going to have a problem. And they said, but not this year.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah, okay, not this year. But last year was the year, and we came and we asked for it was about $2.5 million, and it didn't get funded. We were given $750,000, and because of it left us with a budget gap, which is what this request is. For the FY26 budget, there will be a replacement of the $750,000 of one-time money, because that's not going to be there next year. And then inflationary increases in costs, which you see here is much more moderate going forward than the chaos that it's been in the last 4 years. We took good advantage of one-time dollars that have been floating around, either through our own year-end surplus or through asking for pandemic funds, but then giving general funds. We're not part of the ARPA piece. We had asked for it, intending it to be part of ARPA, but when the dust settled, we were on the outside of that, but we were funded with general funds dollars for the network and some of those other projects.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we had that 4.5 million, so you could do that, I think. Any other questions? Seems pretty straightforward. Anything else you want to tell us?
No, other than we very much appreciate the opportunity and your patience also for those who haven't been on this committee to understand the background. But it was not an unpredictable situation, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You don't take those cookies with you, do you?
What have we? Oh, good, phew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Stay warm.
You too.
ADS is gonna do remote? Or?
Yes, they are not in the waiting.
Okay, 'cause